Musical Hell is hitting the high seas next year. Check out the video information to find out how you can join me and the hit musical 6 on the Norwegian Bliss. This episode of Musical Hell is brought to you by Midnight Musicals. Welcome to the podcast Musical Underground. And by Cafe Himbo Cookbooks, celebrating his 10th anniversary. Thank you. At the risk of starting discourse, I have issues with the way 9/11 is commemorated. In the 2 decades since the terrorist attacks, the day has evolved into a somber 4th of July, a time for politicians and corporations to demonstrate their patriotism through rote sayings and imagery. I think that's why I love Come From Away so much. It's a Canadian show, so it doesn't have all that jingoistic baggage. But more importantly, it truly encompasses the depth and breadth of the tragedy of September 11th and its aftermath. From the first responders who never came home, to the Muslims who faced unjust suspicion and prejudice, to everyone who just watched and felt helpless in the face of something so horrible. That's a story worth telling and remembering. So, let's talk about Operation Yellow Ribbon and its aftermath in Gander, Newfoundland. I used 2 books as sources for this video, and both are well worth reading. The first, of course, is Come From Away, Welcome to the Rock, which features the complete annotated libretto by Irene Sankoff and David Hein, as well as a summary of the real-life events and interviews with the people portrayed in the show, many of which took place at the 10th anniversary celebration depicted in the finale. The second is The Day the World Came to Town, 9/11 in Gander, Newfoundland by Jim DeFetti. While this mostly follows a different group of passengers than Come From Away, it provides useful context and nuance on the subject. So here's how it originally went down. At 9:42 a.m. on September 11, 2001, after 2 planes were flown into the World Trade Center and a third into the Pentagon building, the FAA made the unprecedented decision to close United States airspace to all commercial traffic. This meant that some 240 flights inbound to the U.S. had to be rerouted to Canada, a maneuver that was dubbed Operation Yellow Ribbon. 38 of those flights were routed to Gander International Airport, with only Halifax, Nova Scotia taking in more. While air traffic control orchestrated the influx of flights and security screened all the planes and passengers, a process that lasted well into the morning of September 12th, Gander Mayor Claude Elliott, along with the town council and the leaders of nearby communities such as Appleton, Gambo, Lewisport, and more, prepared for the nearly 7,000 passengers and crew who would be stranded in the area indefinitely. Public buildings and churches were converted to shelters, stores donated supplies, and the community center ice rink was repurposed to store perishable food. The emergency response by community officials was nothing short of incredible, but what astonished the plain people was the radical hospitality and generosity they experienced on an individual level. Locals opened up their homes to strangers in need of showers, phones, or a spare bed. Anyone taking a walk around town was sure to be hailed by drivers offering a ride if they didn't hand over the keys to the car for use while they were at work. Police Constable Oz Fudge spent hours tracking down a woman so he could hug her on behalf of her sister in the States, and hundreds of screech-ins were performed to symbolically induct the outsiders into the community. The planes began departing as early as Thursday the 13th, beginning with flights from non-U.S. carriers returning to their point of origin, with the last plane leaving the following Sunday. Since then, the plain people have responded in kind to their host's generosity through scholarships, a computer lab funded by the Rockefeller Foundation, and lasting relationships. The most extraordinary thing about Come From Away is how much of it is true. Practically everything that happens in the musical, from using a Bible to overcome language barriers, to cardiologists chipping in to clean the bathrooms, to Beulah telling Hannah bad jokes to help her relax, is inspired by actual events during the 5-day layover, or things that Sankoff and Hein encountered during their research. The lyrics for Me and the Sky are in some places drawn word for word from the couple's interview with Beverly Bass. But of course, you can't tell the story of 17,000 people in 90 minutes with 12 actors without a little bit of condensing. People left out of the show include Hannah's husband and family, Hugo Boss chairman Werner Baldessarini, cut out because his subplot had little to do with the rest of the story, and one half of a Beatles tribute band, cut because getting the rights to the Fab Four's catalog was prohibitively expensive. Other characters are composites. Beulah Davis is a combination of Beulah Cooper and Diane Davis, while the character of Bonnie draws from not only the real Bonnie Harris, but also her assistant, the local veterinarian, and the handler who was traveling with the bonobo chimpanzees and took charge of their care. Hannah O'Rourke and Tom McKeon, who inspired Bob's arc, are white but are played by black actors on stage in order to provide the diversity needed to also portray African and Muslim American travelers. This also gives Bob's anxiety over being shot in Appleton undertones similar to those experienced by Winnie House, who was deeply conscious of being the only black person in Gambo. When you condense an event of this scope to a concise narrative, where you choose to focus can be very telling. There are many more stories of what happened to the people of Gander and those who landed there. Families with newly adopted children desperate to make it to U.S. soil, government employees grappling with an entirely new paradigm, people who couldn't bear to wait for flights and made the long land and sea trek back to the United States. Sankoff and Hines' book emphasizes stories with a strong focus on relationships. Hannah is driven by her love for her son and finds solace in her budding friendship with Beulah. Nick and Diane forge a connection in the most extraordinary of circumstances, even as the Kevins find their relationship unable to weather a crisis. Even Beverly's solo focuses on the connection she feels with airplanes and flying. And of course, there's the relationship of the people of Newfoundland with their unexpected visitors, which demonstrates a determined goodwill even in the face of adversity, a knowledge that only as a community can we survive and that nobody needs to be a stranger, especially if you can get them drunk and convince them to kiss a fish.